Have you ever wondered why the harder you try to hold on to someone, the faster they seem to slip away? Why is it that the more love, attention, and effort you give, the more distant they become? Why do you find yourself checking your phone every few minutes, replaying conversations in your mind, analyzing every message, every silence, every change in their behavior while they seem completely unaffected? And the most painful question of all, why does someone who gives you so little control so much of your happiness? If you've ever been attached to an avoidant person, you know exactly what this feels like. It feels like standing in front of a closed door, hoping that if you knock hard enough, love enough, wait long enough, eventually it will open. But instead, the door keeps moving farther away. What makes this situation so dangerous is that most people don't even realize what's happening to them. They think they're fighting for love. They think they're proving their commitment. They think that if they can just say the right thing, do the right thing, become the right person, everything will finally work out. But what if the very thing you're doing to save the connection is actually destroying your peace? Stay with this video until the end, because you're going to discover a truth that changes everything, a truth that has helped countless people break free from emotional exhaustion, reclaim their confidence, and finally stop feeling controlled by someone else's actions. Once you understand it, you'll never look at attachment the same way again. The painful trap nobody talks about is this. Most people think they are suffering because of the avoidant person, but that's not entirely true. They're suffering because they have become emotionally dependent on a result they cannot control. Think about that for a moment. The pain doesn't come only from the delayed text. The pain doesn't come only from the mixed signals. The pain doesn't come only from the distance. The deepest pain comes from what those things mean to you, because every delayed reply feels like rejection. Every moment of silence feels like abandonment. Every bit of distance feels like proof that you're losing someone important. And without realizing it, your entire emotional state becomes connected to their behavior. If they respond, you feel relief. If they pull away, you feel anxiety. If they show affection, you're happy. If they become distant, your mood crashes. Your emotional world starts rising and falling based on decisions that are not yours. And that's where the trap begins. Human psychology works in a fascinating way. The mind naturally wants certainty. It wants security. It wants clear answers. But avoidant people often create the exact opposite experience. They can be warm one day and distant the next, present one moment and unavailable the next. And because the human brain hates uncertainty, it starts chasing answers. It starts chasing reassurance. It starts chasing validation. The more uncertain things become, the more attention your mind gives them. That's why you can spend hours thinking about one person while ignoring every other area of your life. That's why you can achieve goals, receive compliments, and experience good things, yet still feel empty because one person hasn't responded. The mind becomes obsessed with solving the emotional puzzle. But here's the problem. The puzzle never ends. Every answer creates another question. Every good moment creates another fear. Every sign of affection creates another need for reassurance. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop living your life. You start waiting for someone else's choices to determine how you feel, waiting for their text, waiting for their attention, waiting for their commitment, waiting for their approval, waiting for a version of the future that may never arrive. And while you're waiting, life keeps moving. Days pass, weeks pass, months pass, your goals get pushed aside, your confidence starts fading, your identity becomes tied to someone who isn't fully choosing you. This is why attachment to an avoidant can feel so exhausting. It's not because you're weak. It's because your emotional energy is constantly being pulled toward uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the most powerful triggers of human anxiety. The mind keeps saying, maybe tomorrow things will change. Maybe if I try harder. Maybe if I become better. Maybe if I prove my worth. But here's a truth that many people spend years avoiding. The moment you start believing that your worth depends on someone else's ability to see it, you've already given away your power. Your value was never meant to be negotiated. Your worth was never supposed to be earned through suffering. And your peace was never supposed to depend on another person's consistency. Yet, this trap is so common because deep down, most people are not chasing the other person. They're chasing a feeling, the feeling of being chosen, the feeling of being enough, the feeling of finally receiving the love they've been waiting for. But the harder they chase that feeling through someone else, the further away it seems. Because true peace doesn't come from being chosen by another person. It comes from choosing yourself. And that realization changes everything. The journey you're about to take in this video is not about changing the avoidant person. It's not about making them love you more. It's not about learning new tricks to keep their attention. It's about something far more powerful. It's about learning how to reclaim your emotional freedom. Because the day you stop needing someone to validate your worth is the day you become truly unstoppable. And that is where real transformation begins. Once a person begins to understand that their struggle is not only about another individual, a deeper question appears. How does one human being gain so much influence over another person's emotions? How can a single message change your entire day? How can one conversation make you feel hopeful, while one cold response can leave you feeling discouraged for hours? At first, it seems as if the answer is simple. You care deeply. You want the connection to work. You have strong feelings. But beneath all of that is something far more important to understand. The real source of this influence is not love. It is emotional dependence. And emotional dependence is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. The moment your inner peace starts depending on another person's behavior, you slowly hand over control of your emotional world. Most people never notice when this process begins. It happens gradually. A little more focus on them, a little less focus on yourself, a little more concern about what they think, a little less concern about what you need. Over time, your priorities begin to shift. Without realizing it, you start organizing your emotional life around someone else's actions. You wake up wondering how they feel. You go to sleep thinking about what happened between you. You replay old conversations. You search for hidden meanings. You analyze details that most people would forget within minutes. And every day, more of your attention becomes occupied by someone who may not be investing the same energy into you. This is where many people lose themselves, not all at once, but piece by piece. A person who once had goals, interests, passions, and ambitions suddenly finds their thoughts consumed by one relationship. Their mind becomes crowded, their focus becomes divided, their emotional state becomes fragile. Because when another person becomes the center of your attention, everything else starts moving to the background. The strange thing is that many people mistake this for love. They believe that constantly thinking about someone means the connection is special. They believe that emotional intensity proves importance. But obsession and connection are not the same thing. One creates strength, the other creates dependency. One helps you grow, the other keeps you stuck. And this difference changes everything. An avoidant person often becomes powerful in your mind because they represent something you feel you are missing, not because they are perfect, not because they are extraordinary, but because your mind has attached meaning to their approval. The human brain naturally places higher value on things that seem difficult to obtain. This is why people often desire what feels out of reach. This is why limited access increases perceived value. And this is why someone who remains emotionally unavailable can appear far more significant than they actually are. The less available they become, the more attention the mind gives them. The more attention they receive, the more important they appear. The more important they appear, the harder it becomes to let go. A cycle begins, and that cycle can continue for months or even years. Many people trapped in this pattern are not chasing a person. They are chasing emotional certainty. They want to feel secure. They want to feel wanted. They want to feel important. The problem is that they are trying to receive these feelings from a source that cannot consistently provide them. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water while the bottom remains open. No matter how much effort you put in, the result stays the same. You work harder, you try more, you give more. Yet the emptiness remains, not because you are lacking, but because the solution is being searched for in the wrong place. One of the most dangerous effects of emotional dependence is that it changes how you see yourself. Instead of asking, "Is this relationship healthy for me?" you begin asking, "How can I make them stay?" Instead of asking, "Am I receiving what I deserve?" you begin asking, "What more should I do?" Instead of evaluating whether your needs are being met, you focus entirely on meeting theirs. This shift is subtle, but it is life-changing, because once you stop evaluating the situation objectively, you start sacrificing parts of yourself to preserve it. You become more tolerant of behavior that once would have bothered you. You ignore warning signs. You overlook your own discomfort. You convince yourself that things will improve if you remain patient long enough. Meanwhile, your confidence slowly weakens, not because someone took it from you, because you stopped protecting it. The truth is that nobody gains emotional control over you overnight. That power is created when your sense of happiness becomes tied to their choices. And the more your happiness depends on them, the less freedom you experience. Think about how much mental energy gets invested, hours of thinking, hours of worrying, hours of hoping, all directed toward circumstances outside your control. Now imagine what would happen if even half of that energy was redirected toward your own growth, toward your future, toward your health, toward your purpose, toward becoming stronger emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The transformation would be enormous because the attention you continuously give away is the same attention that could be building your own life. This is why detachment becomes such a powerful turning point, not because it changes another person, but because it changes the direction of your focus. And focus is where power lives. Whatever receives your attention begins to grow. If your attention is constantly fixed on uncertainty, anxiety grows. If your attention is invested in yourself, confidence grows. If your attention is directed toward purpose, strength grows. This is the realization many people eventually reach. The issue was never simply the avoidant person. The issue was allowing someone else to occupy a position in your life that only you should hold. The position of deciding your value. And once you understand that, a new chapter begins. Because the next step is discovering why this attachment can feel almost impossible to break, even when you know it is hurting you. At this point, a deeper reality starts to come into focus. If someone has occupied so much space in your thoughts, if their presence or absence has shaped your emotional state for so long, then one question becomes impossible to ignore. Why is it so difficult to walk away? Why can a person clearly see that a situation is draining them, yet still feel pulled toward it? Why does logic say one thing while emotions demand another? The answer lies in something many people never recognize. What feels like love is often mixed with something else, a powerful emotional habit, and habits are not easy to break. The human mind is designed to repeat what feels familiar. It constantly searches for patterns. It learns from repetition. It creates connections between experiences and emotions. Over time, these connections become stronger, and eventually they begin operating automatically. This is exactly what happens when someone becomes deeply attached to an avoidant person. At first, every interaction feels significant. A kind message creates excitement. A moment of closeness creates hope. A small sign of affection feels meaningful. These moments leave an emotional imprint. The brain records them. It remembers them. And most importantly, it begins wanting more of them. But here is where the cycle becomes dangerous. The positive experiences do not happen consistently. They appear unexpectedly. Sometimes there is warmth, sometimes there is distance. Sometimes there is connection, sometimes there is silence. Because the rewards arrive unpredictably, the mind becomes even more focused on obtaining them. This is one of the strongest psychological forces affecting human behavior. People often become more attached to uncertain rewards than guaranteed ones. Think about how many individuals continue pulling the lever on a slot machine, not because they win every time, because they might win. The possibility keeps them engaged, the uncertainty keeps them invested. The next attempt always feels like it could be the one. Many emotional attachments operate in a very similar way. You keep waiting for another good moment, another conversation, another sign, another glimpse of the connection you once experienced. And because those moments happened before, your mind convinces you they will happen again. So you continue investing emotional energy, you continue holding on, you continue waiting, not necessarily because of what is happening now, but because of what happened before. This is where many people become trapped in memories instead of reality. They stop evaluating the current situation. Instead, they focus on potential. They focus on possibilities. They focus on who the other person could become. Meanwhile, they ignore who that person is consistently showing themselves to be. This creates an internal conflict. Part of you sees the truth. Part of you remembers the promise. One side wants freedom. The other side wants another chance. And the battle between those two sides can last far longer than necessary. What makes this even harder is that the mind often romanticizes what it cannot fully have. When access becomes limited, imagination starts filling in the gaps. You begin remembering only the highlights. The good moments become larger. The painful moments become smaller. The mind edits the story. It removes details. It softens reality. It creates an idealized version of the relationship. As a result, letting go feels far more difficult because you are no longer holding on to what exists. You are holding on to what you wish existed. that difference is enormous. One is reality, the other is fantasy, and fantasy can be incredibly powerful. Not because it is true, because it feels comforting. People often remain stuck for years chasing an imagined future, a future where everything suddenly changes, a future where misunderstandings disappear, a future where effort is finally matched. A future where consistency magically appears, but life is not lived in imagined futures. Life is lived in the present, and the present always tells the truth. The present reveals patterns, the present reveals effort, the present reveals priorities, the present reveals where you truly stand. Yet many people avoid looking directly at what is happening because reality can feel uncomfortable. Hope feels safer. Hope allows delay. Hope allows excuses. Hope allows waiting. But growth begins when a person develops the courage to see things exactly as they are, without distortion, without fantasy, without emotional bargaining. Another reason these attachments feel difficult to break is because they often become connected to identity. You begin seeing yourself as someone who must make the relationship work, someone who cannot give up, someone who must prove commitment, someone who believes perseverance will eventually change the outcome. These qualities can be valuable in many areas of life. But there is a difference between persistence and self-sacrifice. There is a difference between commitment and self-neglect. There is a difference between loyalty and losing yourself. When these lines become blurred, a person can spend enormous amounts of time fighting for something that is steadily taking pieces of them away. And because so much time has already been invested, leaving feels painful. The mind starts thinking about everything that has already been given. The energy, the emotions, the effort, the dreams, the plans. Walking away can feel like admitting defeat, but sometimes the strongest decision is not continuing the battle. Sometimes the strongest decision is recognizing that the battle no longer serves you, because true strength is not measured by how long you can endure suffering. True strength is measured by your willingness to choose what is healthy, even when it feels difficult. The person who constantly abandons themselves to keep another person close eventually loses both. The relationship becomes unhealthy, and their relationship with themselves becomes weaker. That is why understanding this emotional habit is so important. You are not dealing with a lack of willpower. You are confronting a deeply conditioned pattern, a pattern built through repetition, expectation, memory, and hope. But every pattern can be changed. Every cycle can be interrupted. Every emotional habit can be replaced. The first step is recognizing what is actually happening, because once you see the mechanism clearly, it begins losing its grip on you. And then another powerful realization emerges. You start understanding that the actions you have been taking in an attempt to bring someone closer may actually be pushing them further away.